Hey guys, Neil here, and today I'm going to do something that I've never done here on the channel before. Today I am going to give you guys one of my own personal horror hot takes, an unpopular opinion if you will. If you've already read the title and description for the video down there, you already know what that is, but I'm just going to say it out loud. I think that Scream, both the original film and the franchise, is overrated. Yeah, I said it. I think it's overrated. Now, before you get down in those comments and tear me a new one, let me just point out, just take a deep breath. Just because somebody says that they think a film is overrated doesn't mean that they don't like the film, because that is definitely not the case here. I absolutely love the original Scream that was released in 1996. I don't know how many times I have seen it, but it's a lot. I mean, we're talking probably a couple of dozen times. Now, when it comes to the sequels, I haven't watched those very often at all. In fact, one of the reasons I wanted to do this video today, because I've been thinking about doing it for quite a while, considering as we get into the video, you'll understand. Just what I've been seeing in the horror community recently. It's just one of those things I was like, I ought to make a video and just tell people why I think this franchise is just overrated. But today it just made sense because it's Saturday and it's opening weekend for Scream 7. Now, I have not gotten out into the theater to see it, and I probably won't. In fact, I'm pretty sure that I won't, because I still haven't seen Scream 6. Yeah, y'all calm down, calm down. It'll all make sense by the time we get to the end of this video. So yeah, I can't even remember how long Scream 6 has been out, but yeah, I've got it on the shelf back there. In fact, I'm pretty sure I've got the 4K UHD version of it. But I haven't sat down and watched it yet. Yeah, I just haven't gotten around to it. It's not that I don't want to watch it. It's not that I'm not looking forward to it. I've just been doing other things and haven't gotten around to it. But I will in my own sweet time. You guys know how I am here on the channel. Sometimes it takes me a minute to get to, even newer films that are coming out. But like I said, the last sequel that I saw was Scream 5. I did see it in the theater, and I liked it. I know most of the people, at least, the fans of the franchise that I have heard talk about it, yeah, it's not their favorite entry in the franchise. But I watched it, like I said, in the theater, and I enjoyed it. For what it was. It met my expectations, and that's one of the things we'll get into as to why, I think this franchise is overrated. But again, just to reiterate, the original Scream is one of my favorite horror films of all time. I absolutely love it. Love, 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 love it. I can't think of a single thing in the film that I don't like. So you would be like, well, it's a perfect horror film. And in a lot of ways, I do consider it to be, a perfect horror film. Now, when it comes to, what my favorite film of all time is, for you guys that have followed me here on the channel for any time, you know that that is the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think that is also a perfect horror film. And in a lot of ways, I think it is even far superior to Scream, even though I love both films. But, why is it my favorite horror film of all time? Well, a lot of, what goes into that is the fact that I'm almost 55 years old. I was born in 1971. I grew up watching horror films from the 70s and the 80s. So naturally, my favorite is going to be from that era. It's just, common sense to, to expect somebody my age to think, a film from the 70s or 80s is the best ever made. And for me, that film is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So you're probably thinking, well, Scream is number 2 on that list, right? No, actually, my second favorite horror film of all time is George Romero's Dawn of the Dead. So, But Scream would be in my top 5. I mean, it really would. John Carpenter's Halloween would be on that list. I'm not sure what the other one is. I'd have to think about it a little more because there's a lot of films to choose from. But I would definitely put the original Scream in my top 5. So that's just, putting it in perspective, how much I do like the original Scream. Now, when it comes to the sequels, I like some better than others. I think my favorite sequel has got to be Scream 2. But again, I have not watched 6 and I have not watched 7. So that may change, but I don't expect it to. I don't know that any of the sequels could outdo Scream 2 for me. But anyway, just wanted to, just say right off the bat, don't think that I'm knocking Scream in any way by saying that it's overrated, because I definitely love this whole franchise. But another thing that, if you followed me here on the channel, for any amount of time, and some of you know this because you're part of this community as well. But, I am, a pretty active, or at least up until recently. Some things have been going on that I don't have the time to do as much as I want to. But I am involved in the horror community here on YouTube. And like I said, a lot of you guys that follow me here on the channel are part of that community. You talk to me on a fairly regular basis in the live stream comments for several other channels that we all follow and support. And when it comes to that community, Scream is the #1 topic that I see every other day. And that's part of, why I think Scream is overrated. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that either. And, I'll explain that here in just a second. But, when it comes to, how I look at Scream and the Scream franchise, to me, it's just no different than any other franchise that is out there. And it's more of just how I approach watching movies. I seem to kind of do it a little different than a lot of people do. Because like I said, in this horror community that is here on YouTube, Scream, and especially for the past year, with the imminent release of Scream 7, that is the lion's share of what I'm seeing out there as far as, what these channels are doing. They're putting up, a new live stream, every week where, they're talking about new theories about, what might be, in store for us in Scream 7. Watching the trailers as they come out, dissecting them frame by frame, trying to pick out clues as to what might be in Scream 7. And it was the same thing when Scream 5 came out, because this has been going on for quite a while now. Ever since, the news came out that we were getting a new entry in the Scream franchise, because the amount of time that passed between Scream 4 and Scream 5 was a big chunk of time. So when it came out, hey, we're getting a new Scream film, it's going to be Scream 5, or, title may change upon release, who knows. That's, what they've been, talking about is the imminent releases of these last 3 sequels. And to be honest with you, I don't care anything about it. And it's not because I don't care about Scream. It's just the way that I am. And that's a big part of why I think Scream is overrated. In fact, that's the biggest part. But let me take a step back and start somewhere else. So again, I mentioned earlier, that I am older than a lot of people in this community, and that's the reason why my favorite horror film of all time is an older film. But for newer generations, starting with the millennials and even more recent, as these fans, got into horror, Scream is the big film, since 1996. It's probably, in my opinion, the most influential film that we've had in the last 30 to 35 years. I mean, there's no denying that, especially when it comes to, the slasher genre. Because when Scream came out in 1996, I mean, you could very well argue that the slasher subgenre was dead in the water. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot coming out that you could classify as a slasher. And a lot of, the films that we did get were not very good. So, Scream comes along and it doesn't just breathe new life into the genre. I think it single-handedly resurrected the slasher genre. I fully believe, in the bottom of my heart, that the reason we are still getting slashers here in 2026, and I'm not just talking about the fact that Scream 7 just dropped, I'm talking about we have gotten other slasher films within the past several months. I know definitely in 2025 we had several new slasher films to come out that were not part of, the big franchises. Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street. We haven't gotten one of those in a while. We haven't got a new Friday the 13th in forever either. But we are getting, the Scream sequels, and like I said, we've gotten a few others that are just, one-off slasher films. And I believe that they are coming out just because Scream was so successful and so influential in 1996. If Scream had never come out, I think slashers would have been dead a long time ago, and you wouldn't get them hardly at all, if at all. So, you definitely have to recognize the importance of Scream, the original, when it came out. But like I said, these newer generations that are getting into horror, starting to watch, more and more horror films, it's not long before they run into Scream. And it's, because it's more in line with, the time that they've been alive. So it's just natural that they would consider it to be their favorite horror film of all time. Now, it's not everybody, but it's a good number of the younger horror fans that I see that, Scream is at the top of their list, and rightly so. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be there. I don't think any less of them, because they don't love the Texas Chainsaw Massacre as much as I do. Yeah, that doesn't have anything to do with it. But when I talk to them about it, it's the things that they say that it's like, oh my goodness. And again, I'm not faulting them. I'm not knocking them. But one of the things that I hear just over and over is just how original the original Scream was. And I'm like, I don't want to be that guy, but I have to break it to you that Scream was not that all that original. It really wasn't. I'm being truthful with that. I'm not saying it, like, well, actually, but I am saying, well, actually, it was not. You look at the elements that make up the original Scream. It's got comedy in it. Well, it was obviously not the first horror comedy. People have been putting comedy into horror films almost as long as they've been around. And, the other thing that, everybody likes to talk about is just the awareness of the characters. Now, the characters in the original Scream were not like breaking the fourth wall, self-aware. They were not intended to, to know that they were in an actual horror film. But what they were is they were horror-savvy characters. They were characters that grew up watching horror films. They know the tropes. They know how horror films work, the mechanics of, a horror film, especially slashers, because that is what Scream is effectively a parody of slasher films. I don't have to tell you this. If you're watching this video, this is old news to you. But this is, the kind of thing that I keep hearing that, people are saying, that's what was so original about it. But it really wasn't. Having characters that were, just, smart and aware of their situation, as being a horror-like scenario, something that you might actually see in a horror film. Wes Craven did it himself with New Nightmare, right? It's not exactly like Scream. Of course it's not. He didn't just, make the exact same film again, but he's imagining this same idea that, characters in real life, horror and real life are coming together in a movie that is more aware of itself than your typical horror film. So even with the same director, we've got, a previous film already that has, at least brought the idea, to life. And there have been films before New Nightmare that did the same thing. I can't think of them off the top of my head. But my whole point with this is like, like I said, these people that want to talk about, how original Scream is, aren't really aware, I guess, of just, what else is out there. For you guys that follow me, I'm very loath here on the channel to ever say any movie is original. Because just as soon as I do, I'll remember one that I've seen before that was similar. Are they exactly the same? No. And, the just to put Scream into its history perspective, the first horror film, or what is generally accepted as the first horror film, was a French film, and I can't pronounce its original French title. I won't even attempt to butcher it, but it translates into English as The House of the Devil. It was a 3-minute long silent film. I've seen it. It's available here on YouTube, or at least it was if you want to watch it. It's called The House of the Devil. And it was, ironically enough, or I don't know if it was in any way intentional, with Scream's release in 1996, but it came out in 1896. So a full 100 years prior to Scream in 1996. So when Scream came out, there had literally been a century of horror films that have been released over the years. Now, obviously, as you get closer to 1996, the number of films each year continues to grow and grow. I mean, here in 2025, I think, if you look it up on IMDb, there were upwards of like 2,000 horror films released in 2025. That's a lot of movies, and I don't know where they all are, because I don't even know how you would begin to hunt all of them down to watch them. But point is, when Scream came out in 1996, there had been thousands of horror films that had been released previously. So the idea that any film could come up with something that is 100% original is pretty far-fetched. Somebody has done it, at least in a similar style, previously. But the way that I like to look at it, because otherwise, you might be thinking, well, if nothing's original, why do we even bother watching horror films? And it's like, because they're still good. And the reason for that, it's like going to a bar and ordering a drink. I mean, there's hundreds of different drinks that you could order, right? But the fact of the matter is, they're all made up of just a few different kinds of alcohol. I mean, you've got beer, you've got wine, whiskey, gin, rum, vodka. There's only so many different kinds. But even within, those different kinds, you've got, different sub-kinds. Think about it like subgenres of horror, right? With beer, you've got lagers, you've got stouts, you've got reds, IPAs, wheat beers. I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of beer, and they are different from each other. But when it comes to, like I said, going in and just ordering a cocktail, you've literally got hundreds of choices. But they're all made up of the same basic ingredients. Just one might have something that, nothing else or very few things have. Like, example, a vodka martini is a lot different than a screwdriver. But their main alcoholic ingredient is still vodka. But vermouth tastes nothing like orange juice, so they're completely different from each other. But a lot of these cocktails are very similar because they have similar ingredients. And that's the way horror movies are now. Is any one thing original? No. But when you take all of these things and you mash them together, the end product is something that nobody may have ever seen before. And I say that a lot on the channel, watching a movie for the first time. I'm like, I've seen all of this stuff before, but never quite this way. Or at least I can't think of another movie that did it quite this way. And that's the case that we have with Scream. Scream took all of these things that were, if you're as old as I am and have been watching horror movies as long as I have, all of these things were familiar. But they put it together in such a way that I could honestly say, when the end credits started rolling, I have never seen a film just like this one. And that's what I love about Scream. And that's also what gives me, and hopefully the rest of you, hope that horror can continue indefinitely. We just need good people that can put things together in a way that we haven't seen. And I say that all the time, on the channel with stuff, watching it for the first time. It's like, yeah, this felt new and fresh because I've never seen it done this way before. So in that regard, people saying that, that Scream is, it's just so unique. They're right. But the things that they point out as being unique is where I'm like, okay, you're getting into, making this film much overrated than it should be. But of course, the biggest thing, and of course this will be a spoiler, but if you're watching this video, I'm sure you've seen Scream as many times as I have. The two killers. Everybody's always like, man, the two killers, man, who thinks of this kind of shit? And I'm like, Mario Bava, Blood and Black Lace, 1964, 32 years before Scream came out. Yeah, go watch that movie and see if you see some similarities to the big reveal at the end. They even do it very similarly. Is that a word? They do it quite similar. So, in Scream, is it Skeet? Yeah. He's a suspicious character, right? We're like, we got people dying around here, and you look like you might be a killer. Well, he gets arrested, thrown in jail, and then something from the killer happens while he's in jail. Can't be Skeet anymore, right? He couldn't do that in jail, so yeah, he's not as sketchy as we thought he was. Till you get to the end of the film and find out there's two killers, and he's one of them. Same thing, the exact same thing happens in Blood and Black Lace. The character that you are, one of your suspicious characters gets arrested. Something else happens while he's in jail, and you don't find out to the end that he's one of the killers. So yeah, the idea, the core twist in Scream has been done before. But most newer horror fans are not going to watch, a giallo film from Italy that was released back in 1964. But I'm guaranteeing you the filmmakers of Scream have watched it, because there's no way they both come up with the exact same idea. And it's been done since, in between as well. I won't spoil those movies for you, but yeah. And the two that I'm thinking about are also giallo films, so they were copying Blood and Black Lace. But it has been done since. Scream was not the second film to come up with it as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's just the way that, that people talk about Scream as being so original that makes me feel like it's just overrated, because, again, it's not original in any one thing that it does. It's the culmination. It's the mashing of all of these things together that makes Scream so unique. And again, that's what I love about it. And that's also the fact that this can still be done today is what gives me hope that we're going to continue to get really good horror films, at least for the rest of my life. And what happens after that, I don't really care. But getting back, the main reason that I do think that Scream is overrated is just how much it gets talked about. I mean, and again, this is just a difference in the way that I approach movies. So like I said, the horror community that I'm involved in, they talk about Scream all the time. I mean, all I've heard, at first it was, what's going to be in Scream 5, and then it was what's going to be in Scream 6, and now it's what's going to be in Scream 7. And it's just so much of it. And again, I don't care, because that's just the way that I am. I don't get excited about new films coming out. I really don't. And the reason for that is because, and again, if you follow me here on the channel, I know I took down all my previous videos, so those of you that are new here don't have a whole lot to go on. I'm building it back up. Don't worry. But, I've said a lot of times, I went into this film completely blind. And that's the way I want to go into films. I don't want to, I don't even want to know who directed the film before I watch it, because that can set expectations. That's one of the things I don't know if you guys caught it when these films came out, but I sure as hell did. Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy. All three of those films start, or at least it's been a while since I've seen them all. but I'm pretty sure they all start with like an opening scene that is narrated by Kate Blanchett as Galadriel. And, she explains, some things that are going to set the tone for the film. And then you see the title screen, The Lord of the Rings. And then the movie starts. What you don't see is directed by Peter Jackson, starring, Elijah Wood, Kate Blanchett, John Rhys Davies, all those people that were in those films, Viggo Mortensen. Yeah, you don't see any of that until 4 hours later when the movie's over. You see, this was directed by Peter Jackson. And I love that about him because it's like, let's get into the movie. I'm not influenced in any way unless I just happen to already know who's involved in this film. And I like to go into films, not knowing that information because it can make a difference. I mean, can you imagine if you had never seen The Thing before and you just picked it up and said, oh, this looks pretty cool from the cover. So you pop it in and you watch it and you find out at the end that it's directed by John Carpenter. But you can't do that because all of John Carpenter's movies, his name is part of the fucking title. The name of the movie is not The Thing. The name of the movie is John Carpenter's The Thing. It's John Carpenter's Halloween. It's John Carpenter's Ghosts of Mars. He does that with all of his films. So, yeah, he's putting it out there. This is my movie. And for a lot of people, that's what draws them in. Oh, that's a John Carpenter film. I want to watch that. I would rather find that out at the end because I'm already biased going in because I know John Carpenter's the director that I'm supposed to like this movie. So, yeah. And of course, I didn't like them all because I do actually have a brain. But I went into those films wanting to like them, and I don't like doing that. That's just the way that I am. So having all of this discussion about, an upcoming horror film is simply not for me, but just the amount of time that Scream is getting. I mean, by far, Scream has gotten more talk time out here on YouTube than any of the last Halloween trilogy films and any other movie that I can think about. And that's what ultimately makes me think that it's overrated. Again, it's not a bad thing. It's just the way that I approach films. I mean, again, can you just imagine, I forget exactly, 2012, is that when this film came out? You saw this movie, it was called The Conjuring. So you popped it in and you watched it. And, right as it fades to black and the movie's over, you're like, fuck yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And then you see a James Wan film. And then you're like, well, I should have known. It had his fingerprints all over this motherfucker. How did I not know that was a James Wan film? I mean, that's the kind of thing I want to see at the end of the film. I don't want to see it at the beginning, The Conjuring, a James Wan film, because that sets expectations. And again, I just like to avoid that as much as I can. That's just me. That's the way I like to approach horror films. I want to go in with no expectations and just experience the film that way. And then when it's over, I either like it or I don't, or maybe it's somewhere in between. It'll be what it is what I'm trying to say. And I just don't want, all of that expectation or any expectation going in. And to take part in any of these discussions, which for those of you that, know that I'm there with you in this community, that is the reason that you haven't seen me around much. Because I just don't want, to be in those conversations or even read them as they go by, because that's going to set expectations for a film that I want to go into blind. That is really the only reason. It's nothing against anybody. I mean, and also I am a little busier now than I used to be, and I really just don't have time to do it. But yeah, I just don't want to be, in that culture where, those expectations, because if you're listening to theories and, going through trailers and trying to find clues, waiting for the latest news to come out, maybe somebody slipped something that, wasn't supposed to be released, you're going to form expectations for the film, and it's even more, I don't know. I don't know what the word I'm looking for. It's worse that way because you start to build not just expectations, but an idea of what it is that you actually want to see in the film. And if you don't get that, what happens? Are you going to still be able to like what you got? Or are you going to feel so disappointed it wasn't what you wanted it to be that you have a problem liking what the film actually turned out to be? And that's what I'm trying to avoid. But it's just all this talk about it. Just, like I said, it's everywhere I look out here on YouTube. And because of that, and like I said, it's been ever since Scream 5 came out. So yeah, this franchise is definitely overrated. And that's why I think it's overrated. That's all. It's not a big a hot take as you originally thought. I mean, it would be a lot worse if I told you the film sucked, but I can't tell you that in good faith because I'd be flat out lying to you. But anyway, guys, tell me what you think. I mean, how do you approach watching horror movies? I mean, do you like to get into the nitty gritty, and talk a film up, or, just talk about it, just talk about it until it finally comes out, and then you can really talk about it. Is that what you like to do? Because, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Or are you like me and just try to avoid the whole situation so that you can just go in and see what it is without having, any preconceptions or any knowledge that you really, wouldn't want to have? Is that your approach? I mean, I'd be interested to hear, like I said, how you guys are approaching these new films coming out. And I'm sure if there's going to be a Scream 8, we'll start this cycle all over again, and I'll still feel the same way about it. But anyway, guys, drop me a comment. Let me know what you think. If you would, give the video a thumbs up because that will help it here on YouTube. And that will help me, and that will help the channel. And if you're not a subscriber to the channel, how about coming on board? Hit that subscribe. I'd like to have you here. And turn on those notifications, and that way you'll never miss a new video. So as always, guys, thanks for watching. And until next time, we'll see you.